You ever have one of those moments when you realize someone just declared war on you, but you don't even know why yet? That was me, standing in my own driveway, holding a bright orange HOA violation notice slapped onto my mailbox like a badge of shame. Unauthorized construction activity, it said in bold letters. My stomach twisted. Construction? The only thing I'd done that week was patch up a few potholes at the end of our shared street, potholes the HOA had ignored for months. Turns out, doing something helpful in this neighborhood was apparently an act of rebellion. Now, if you've never dealt with an HOA Karen before, let me explain. These aren't just neighbors. These are self-appointed guardians of perfection, armed with clipboards and binoculars. And our very own Karen? Her name was Linda, but everyone just called her the Enforcer. She was the type who'd measure grass with a ruler, call the cops on kids for sidewalk chalk, and send complaint letters about unsightly trash bins that had been out for 5 minutes. I should have known fixing those potholes would draw her out. Sure enough, a few hours after I finished, she came marching down the street in her neon pink tracksuit, HOA rulebook in hand. "Did you authorize that road work?" she barked, pointing at the fresh asphalt. I wiped my hands and said calmly, "No one did." "That's the problem. I just made the road safe again." She huffed. "That's not your responsibility. You've disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic. I'm calling the HOA." And she did. Right there, in front of me, she pulled out her phone and started snapping photos. Of me, of my tools, even my truck's license plate. I didn't argue. I just smiled, because while she was busy calling in reinforcements, I was already planning something she wouldn't believe even if she saw it herself. You see, the HOA had been promising to resurface our street for over a year, but they never did. So I'd made a few calls of my own. A friend owed me a favor, a big one. That's when the idea hit me. If the HOA wanted to play by the book, I'd show them what real construction activity looked like. And Karen, she'd have a front row seat, because the next morning, she'd wake up to the sound of something massive rolling down the street. And it wasn't just a truck. It was a road roller. At exactly 7:12 a.m., the calm of our pristine little neighborhood shattered like glass. Birds scattered, car alarms chirped, and coffee cups trembled on countertops. The unmistakable low rumble of heavy machinery echoed through the cul-de-sac. From my porch, I watched as a bright yellow road roller, yes, the same kind they use for full-blown city paving projects, slowly crept around the corner. The driver, my buddy Mike, gave me a thumbs up through the window, grinning like a kid who'd just found the keys to a tank. Meanwhile, curtains started twitching across the street. People peeked out, wide-eyed, trying to understand why a literal construction vehicle was rolling past manicured lawns and white picket fences. And then, like clockwork, she appeared. Karen, robe, slippers, and hair curlers still in, burst through her front door, clutching her HOA clipboard like it was a weapon. "What on earth is that?" she shrieked, pointing straight at the roller. I leaned casually against my fence. "Good morning, Karen. Just doing some real road maintenance this time." Her face turned redder than a stop sign. "You can't just bring industrial machinery into a residential neighborhood. That's a violation of at least 6 HOA ordinances." I shrugged. "Oh, I checked. Turns out the HOA bylaws say residents can assist in neighborhood upkeep if it's for community safety. Since the potholes are technically public hazard, I'm just helping." The look she gave me could have curdled milk. "I'm calling the HOA president right now," she snapped, storming back inside. The road roller roared to life again, pressing against the cracked asphalt with deep, slow power. The ground trembled beneath us. Neighbors began trickling out, coffee mugs in hand, watching with awe and, honestly, amusement. "About time someone fixed this mess," old Mr. Daniels from across the street muttered. "That bump's been wrecking my suspension for months." Even a few kids started cheering as the machine smoothed the road like butter. It was oddly satisfying. The rhythmic grind, the smell of fresh tar, the sight of something finally being done right. But just as Mike was finishing the last stretch near my driveway, something unexpected happened. Karen reappeared, this time dragging the HOA president himself, a nervous-looking man in a golf shirt who clearly wanted no part of the situation. She pointed furiously toward the roller. This nonsense needs to stop immediately. He's destroying HOA property." The president hesitated, glancing from me to the perfectly paved stretch of road. "Well, actually, it looks better than before," he mumbled. Karen's jaw dropped. And that's when she noticed. The roller wasn't stopping. It was idling awfully close to her brand new white fence. And Mike? He had that mischievous grin again. Karen's voice hit a pitch so high that even the neighborhood dogs started barking. "Stop that machine right now," she shrieked, sprinting toward the edge of her pristine lawn. Mike eased the roller to a slow crawl, its steel drum rumbling inches from her freshly painted fence. The ground vibrated under our feet as he leaned out the window, completely unfazed. "Ma'am, I'm just finishing this section," he said with a grin. "Wouldn't want your property line looking uneven." Karen nearly choked on her own outrage. "Uneven? You're going to ruin it." I stepped forward, arms crossed, doing my best to look innocent. "Karen, relax. You said you wanted things by the book, right? The HOA requested a safe and uniform road surface. Can't have half a lane unrolled. It would violate their own maintenance guidelines." Her eyes flicked to the HOA president, who stood awkwardly beside us, fiddling with his phone like he wished he could disappear. "Well," he stammered, "technically he's not wrong." Karen spun toward him, furious. "Whose side are you on?" Before he could answer, the roller gave a mighty hiss of compressed air and lurched forward another few feet. The rumbling intensified, the machine's massive drum gliding just a little too close for comfort. A tiny flake of white paint chipped off her fence and fluttered to the ground. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen gasped, clutching her chest like she'd just witnessed a crime. "That's vandalism! I'll have you arrested!" Mike cut the engine, hopping down from the roller. "Arrested? For improving public infrastructure?" he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Lady, this is the cleanest piece of road your HOA's ever had. The neighbors loved it." You could hear the murmurs turning into chuckles. Someone even started clapping. Karen's face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'm filing a complaint." "Already ahead of you," I interrupted. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email thread with the HOA board, the one where I'd sent photos of the potholes, their ignored promises to repair them, and their written permission to pursue independent solutions if necessary. Her mouth fell open. She looked from me to the roller, to the freshly laid road. The reality hit her like a ton of asphalt. She'd called the HOA on the guy who was following their own rules better than they were. I leaned in slightly, voice calm but deliberate. "Karen, sometimes doing things right looks messy for a minute, but in the end, it makes everything smoother." Mike restarted the roller, steering it carefully toward the last patch of road, the one running right along her property line. And that's when the real panic set in. The roller's engine growled to life again, sending a deep vibration through the ground that made Karen's white picket fence rattle. She jumped back, clutching her clipboard like it could shield her from a 10-ton machine. "Make it stop! You'll crack my foundation!" she yelled. Mike leaned halfway out the cabin window and shouted over the rumble. "Don't worry, ma'am. Just compacting the soil near your fence line. Should keep it from shifting in heavy rain." I couldn't help but smirk. "See, Karen? We're protecting property values. Isn't that what the HOA's all about?" She glared at me, eyes darting between the roller and the growing crowd of neighbors gathering along the sidewalk. Half the street had come out now, some filming, others just sipping coffee like they were watching Saturday morning entertainment. The HOA president looked like a man trapped in a nightmare. All right, let's all calm down," he stammered, stepping forward with trembling hands. "Maybe we can just pause the machinery for a moment?" But Mike, bless his fearless soul, gave the roller one last push forward. The drum rolled over the last stretch of cracked pavement, flattening it perfectly. But as it did, a deep crunch echoed through the air. Karen gasped. The bottom rail of her pristine fence had splintered, just barely. It wasn't destroyed, but it definitely wasn't flawless anymore. For a few seconds, no one said a word. Even the roller's engine idled quietly, as if it knew it had crossed some invisible suburban line. Then Karen exploded. You've ruined it!" "Do you have any idea how much that fence cost me?" she screeched, pointing accusingly at me. "You'll pay for this!" I kept my cool. "Actually," I said slowly, "I think the HOA might want to discuss reimbursement, since they authorized road maintenance and I volunteered my time. This area technically counts as community property." Her jaw fell open. "No, that's not, you can't." But before she could finish, the HOA president raised a hand. "He's right," he admitted reluctantly. "The fence extends 2 feet into the shared easement zone. That part isn't technically private property." Karen froze. The blood drained from her face. Neighbors began murmuring again, a mix of amusement and disbelief. Someone whispered, "So, she built her fence on community land?" I couldn't resist a small chuckle. Looks like the HOA might be the one owing me an apology this time. The tension cracked like thunder, and a few people even laughed outright. Karen's expression hardened, but you could see the panic forming behind her fury. Because now, it wasn't just about the fence. It was about to become a full-blown HOA scandal, and I was ready for it. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Word had spread fast about the road roller, the fence, and the fact that HOA Karen had accidentally fenced off part of community property. People who usually never left their houses before noon were suddenly out for a walk, pretending to check their mail just to get a glimpse of the scene. When I stepped outside with my coffee, the road shimmered under the sun, perfectly flat, smooth as glass. My buddy Mike had already hauled the roller back to his construction yard, but the evidence of our operation was clear for everyone to see. Then came the sound no one wanted to hear. The HOA president's little electric golf cart humming down the street. Sitting beside him, of course, was Karen. Arms crossed, lips pursed so tight they could have cracked glass. They stopped in front of my driveway. The president cleared his throat. "Good morning," he said, his tone cautious. "We've reviewed the situation regarding the, road maintenance and fence alignment." Karen glared at him, silently urging him to tear me apart. He sighed. "It appears that technically you were within your rights to conduct the repairs. The road is under community maintenance jurisdiction, and you followed the safety clauses outlined in Section 8C. Karen's jaw dropped. "You're siding with him." "He brought a road roller into our neighborhood." The president rubbed his temples. "Yes, but he improved public property. Meanwhile, the fence in question," he turned his gaze to her, "extends 24 inches into HOA-owned land. That will need to be corrected immediately." The crowd that had gathered couldn't help it. A few people actually applauded. Karen went pale. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," the president said, his patience finally gone. "Your fence will have to be moved back, or removed entirely at your expense." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. She stormed off toward her house, muttering about injustice and reckless men with machines. Meanwhile, I just stood there, sipping my coffee, admiring the perfectly paved road, and the irony of watching her HOA authority crumble right where she'd tried to assert it. A week later, contractors showed up at her place. Not for me, but for her. The fence came down, plank by plank, until the easement was clear again. When they finished, I gave the road one last look, smooth, clean, level, the way it should have been all along. And just as I turned to head inside, Karen's voice rang out weakly from her porch. "I hope you're happy." I smiled. "Happier than ever, Karen. The road's finally smooth, just like our HOA. Drama should have been from the start." The neighborhood laughed. Even the HOA president cracked a smile. Sometimes revenge doesn't need shouting or chaos. Sometimes it just needs a road roller and a calm cup of coffee.